These 5 clips that I show you could be the example of the forming of the most wicked pastor in North America. This is Reverend Dr. Carla Cheatham from Faith Church in Texas. And she has a 7-point sermon. I'm going to take out 2 of those points because they relate more to American politics than theological truths found in the Bible. But here, first she claims that the Bible should never be made law. Let's give her a listen.
I'm a pastor. Of course, I believe in the separation of church and state, which means theology never gets codified into law.
Now, I really question if she's read the Bible. And I really question if she understands where the laws of the United States came from. Of course, many of them came from the Bible. For instance, murder. There needs to be 2 or 3 witnesses. These are all found in the Old Testament. Stealing, another 10 commandment. All these laws that you see in society, specifically Canada and United States, many of them are based on the Bible, and the people who form their constitution and their laws claim to be basing these things off the Bible. Secular society and a society without God cannot justify any of these commands or laws. Here's number 2. She says that sin won't be talked about at this church.
I'm a pastor. Of course, I believe in healing brokenness, but you will never hear about shame, judgment, or even sin at this church.
If this preacher never wants to talk about sin, then she won't be able to read basically any page of the Bible. We hear about sin really from Genesis chapter 3 all the way to the book of Revelation. But my suspicion is, and this is probably true, is she won't be talking about the sins that she doesn't want to talk about. She won't want to talk about LGBTQ plus sins or other sins that she is affirming of. She won't be able to read, for instance, books like Romans, and specifically Romans chapter 1, where it speaks about how people give in to their sinful desires, how they give in to their lustful desires of women lusting after women and men lusting after men, and all the vices that are mentioned there in Romans chapter 1. Number 3, she is very boldly pro-choice.
I'm a pastor. Of course, I believe that all lives are sacred, which means that women and those who can bear children should make the decisions that they, their doctor, their family, and their God believes is best for them.
Someone in the church can say whatever they want, but abortion is murder. Life is sacred. And a Christian, if they want to follow Jesus Christ, must be pro-life. There's no such thing as a pro-choice Christian. Those are contradictions in terms. Number 4, she says that, well, Jesus saved us just because he stood up against the state. Let's give her a listen.
I'm a pastor. Of course, I believe in the salvific nature of the cross, but it was because Jesus non-violently stood up to empire and refused to fight back or back down, not because some immature, unhealthy parent of a God required blood and guts.
This might be the most upsetting of the things that she says. This is in essence blasphemy, a disregard for God, his glory, his holiness, God and his grace and his love. When you disregard that Jesus died for sins, the whole Christianity, the whole truth of God comes crumbling down. You literally have nothing left but empty commands and empty promises if Jesus didn't die and if Jesus was not raised from the dead. But just thinking about what she's saying there, God showed his love by giving us his son, John 3:16. Jesus showed his love, 1 John 3:16, by laying down his life for people. And in 1 John, that laying down is described as Jesus dies as a propitiation. It means that he takes the wrath of God, he bears the judgment of God, so that those who are called by grace have their sin record wiped out. They can be free from the judgment of sin and forgiven. This is in essence a denial of the good news of Jesus Christ. And number 5, she radically promotes LGBTQ plus issues.
I'm a pastor. Of course, I believe we should be exactly as God designed us to be, which means that queer lives are worthy, divine, beloved, and acceptable exactly as they are. No exceptions.
When I hear comments like this, I can't help but think that this preacher hates the living God, because she disregards God's authority in God's word. She disregards any form of restraint on sexuality, and she disregards sexual purity as taught in God's word. You can just think of 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. The will of God for your life is holiness and to avoid sexual immorality. When Jesus saves you, he calls you to sexual purity. He calls you to live a holy life in every area of your life, specifically in this regard, sexual purity. This TikTok clip is just a small example of how far many churches have wandered from Jesus Christ, his authority, and his word. So much so that it isn't even, what they're teaching isn't even recognizable with Christianity anymore. They have signs and symbols in their churches that completely are against Jesus and his word. They hate God, they disregard Jesus, and they hate his word. Thanks for watching, and God bless.